Minnie in Canada has been on hold for a long time. Thanks so much for your patience. I don't know if either one of us are qualified to do your call justice, but you had a question about it. It seems to me that what's entered here says molecular evolution is insufficient to disprove the possibility of God. Is that what you're calling in to talk about?
Yes. So I'm here to present a few arguments in favor of God's existence. So my first argument is intended to rebuke the Darwinian theory of evolution, according to which we were created from animals or primitive living organisms, because it's one thing to believe in the mechanisms of molecular evolution and another to assert that we evolved from animals. So,
okay. So first
evolution,
of all, Minnie, I just want to get some clarification here. So first of all, we are animals, but let's say you were able to disprove our evolution, the theory of evolution by means of natural selection, the cornerstone of biology. Let's assume that you could call in to our little atheist show and disprove it. Would we agree hang on, would we agree that disproving evolution does not prove God?
Okay, so my purpose here is to show or demonstrate that molecular evolution does exist, but it is not enough to disprove the possibility of God.
Okay, Minnie, stop. Listen to me. That's what I asked you at the beginning. You're saying molecular evolution is not sufficient to disprove the possibility of God. At no point have I or any biological scientist claimed that evolution disproves the possibility of a God. So you're wanting to prove something that none of us have said or advocated for. I don't think that evolution disproves the possibility of God. I haven't seen the possibility of a God demonstrated or debunked. I find it to be an unfalsifiable proposition, and we have no idea if it's possible or not. But you could sit here and disprove evolution, and that won't prove God.
It's okay. So my original intention was for the listeners that might use science conveniently to kind of just say that we don't need God. But I can move on my second argument to kind of like complement my belief in God, if that's okay with you.
Hi, Minnie.
Yes.
Can I talk?
Yep.
Can I talk to you for a second?
Yes.
Hi. So first of all, again, thank you for phoning in. It's a privilege to talk to you. It's nice to meet you. And you have a really nice voice, by the way. You have a nice phone manner. You should use that. You should get into some job that involves your voice. It's a really nice listening voice. Here's what I'd like to ask you. I think you're aware that neither Matt nor I are scientists. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think you could do, you yourself might not be very money-minded, but if you had $1.1 million, did you do a lot of good with that, even if you didn't want to keep it for yourself? You'd like to do charitable things and change people's lives and do some good in the world if you had $1.1 million? Would that be a good thing, you think?
I'm not sure if I understood, but with that amount of money, you would like to spend it on other people.
Right.
Take care
so
of
here's what you can do. The current value of the Nobel Prize which is awarded for physiology or medicine is approximately $1.1 million. Now, if your arguments are good, if they are sound, if they will stand up to scrutiny, and you can present them to people who can evaluate them, in other words, scientists who know about this area, unlike myself and Matt, you would probably be in line because evolutionary theory has been around for so long, and it seems so robust, and it seems so multiple supported by so many different areas of science. You would probably get a Nobel Prize for your work if you were right, and you may well be right. I'm not saying you're not. And that would give you it's worth about 1.1 million. But you see, Matt and I can't evaluate it because we're not qualified to, unfortunately.
It's okay, then I would like to present my second argument with epistemology. I know that's theory of knowledge. that there are many ways to acquire knowledge, and these sources include perception, reason, memory, and personal testimony. So I just want to share a brief testimony of how I became a born-again Christian and tell you why it wasn't just a false positive.
Minnie?
Yeah, the show's not really about sharing testimony, though.
So,
over to you, Matt.
No.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you share your personal testimony, why do you think that should convince anybody?
Okay, well, because I will tell you why it wasn't just a false positive, because in science we have negative controls. We basically compare two conditions, one in which we don't expect to observe. Yes?
It's never about personal testimony.
You're not answering my question.
Okay.
I wanted to know, so like, do you realize that I was a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian from the time I was 5 until I was 30 something? I had a personal testimony. I've met people with personal testimonies. I've heard countless personal testimonies. The thing is, when you talk about epistemology, yes, personal testimony is one of the way that people get information. But let's say there are 3 people who offer their personal testimony, and we know that they can't all be true. They could potentially all be false, but we know they can't all be true. How do we tell whether or not somebody's personal testimony is accurate? And how do we tell if what the conclusion they've reached is true? What is the epistemology that lets me determine Minnie had an amazing experience, and I'm happy to hear what it was, but what is the epistemology that can make me conclude that because you had an experience that led you to conclude there's a God, I should also conclude there's a God?
Okay, can I answer this indirectly by just providing some evidence for the resurrection? So I have empirical data of spiritual manifestations of the Holy Spirit. So empirical is based on, confirmed with, or verified by observation.
Minnie, you don't. You don't have, you would have a Nobel Prize if you had empirical evidence of the supernatural. The supernatural is not currently something, the supernatural is not something that we can currently have evidence for. You would have won every prize on the planet if you had empirical evidence of the supernatural.
Can I explain my point?
So, Minnie, here's the problem. You seem to only want to preach, and you seem to only want to stay on your script. You don't answer any question we offer. You don't seem to have any understanding of epistemology. You just wanted to rattle it off. So what is it that you think you have that is proof of the supernatural?
Okay, so I know that some arguments have more weight in a debate. That's why I choose to not focus on the physical evidence.
Minnie, I don't need an explanation. Minnie, I do not need an explanation of why you're dodging the question. I need you to answer it.
Okay, I'll answer it. So, if we cannot characterize the interaction between the spiritual and the physical, then your physical evidence can prove or disprove spiritual realities. You cannot conclude with a necessary degree of certainty, because in science we understand the limitations of our data and of our knowledge. That's why we quantify uncertainty. That's why physical and spiritual phenomena should be considered separately, because if we cannot characterize the interaction between the two, then how can you say that that I need absolute this relationship between the physical and the spiritual? No, that's why.
No, I don't know, because you are reading something and you don't understand it, and I don't understand it.
Yeah,
I think I'm being misunderstood because what?
Yeah, Minnie, are you sharing things with us now that mean a great deal to you personally?
I feel like I am just being misunderstood because I feel like people don't understand the point I'm making. Because I just want to focus not on the physical evidence for the resurrection, but rather talk about the spiritual and the living evidence.
There is many. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to let Ian take the rest of this. There is no evidence of the spiritual or supernatural. You are labeling.
Yes, I have.
No, you are labeling people's. You are labeling people's personal experiences and claiming they're spiritual. What you just read about distinguishing and drawing a line between the physical and the spiritual and the supernatural. You don't have evidence of the supernatural. And what you're doing right now is you just suggested that since we can't have physical evidence of the resurrection, we could focus on some other evidence for the resurrection. And that's not the way things work. You need to demonstrate the truth of the resurrection, and you need to demonstrate that the spiritual world exists, and you haven't done that.
Okay, I will do it now. So you know that the wind is real because you feel it blowing your direction. You see the branches move. So
we can measure the wind.
Characterize
we can measure the wind. It's not just I feel it. We can measure the wind. How do you measure spiritual?
Okay, so if I want to characterize and quantify 3 drugs, I can use liquid chromatography coupled with time of flight mass spectrometer. So following the separation and the ionization of the compounds by electrospray, they will reach the detector dependently of their masses. This process will destroy the initial compounds. That's why
Minnie, what are you reading from?
However,
what are you reading from? I'm just
okay,
interested. What's your source? What are you reading from?
I am a biochemistry graduate, and I'm using a scientific example to explain why we don't necessarily have to rely on one mean to acquire knowledge.
No, Minnie. Ian asked you what you were reading from.
So this is bioanalytical chemistry. So what I'm saying is that so basically the compound would disintegrate. This analogy shows that even though the physical evidence, such as the burial cloth, is discarded with time.
Minnie, I swear to the God that you believe in, I am completely bored and frustrated by you reading to me. I want to have conversations with people who can actually think, people who consider what I say, process it, and try to come up with an actual answer to the question. That's what I'm doing. I'm not sitting here reading things to you. I don't want to be read to. Submit your paperwork to the Nobel Prize Committee and earn your prize for being the first person ever to demonstrate the truth of anything spiritual or supernatural before they revoke your degree in chemistry for misusing it. But stop reading to me. You're either going to talk to me or I'm going to talk to somebody else.
I think it's a personal attack directed against me because
Why?
She sounded nice, though.
She sounded very nice, but she wasn't even listening when I was begging her to listen. Yeah. It's a personal attack directed towards me.
We really like conversations and getting to know people and meeting people for the first time. But if you're going to ring up to read out of a book, hey, I've got a great idea. Let's read out of mine. Let's push my book.
Here's one: cold reading for business.
Yeah,
how to apply cold reading psychology to sales and business. The one I'm currently working through, by the way, is how to work for yourself and win. Because I work for myself now, and I don't always win. So I'm working for that.
No, it's just not, by all means, win the Nobel Prize, get your 1.1, do some great things in the world for it, and then call back in. That'd be great. We'd have a nice conversation then.